What's up, everyone? Welcome to the First Ones to Die. I'm here with Jerome and Alex. I was about to say I'm here with Jonathan and Alex, but that would make no sense because I am Jonathan.
You're gonna start speaking in third person now.
Apparently, you know,
That's who you are with yourself.
hey, I
Going a
am with
little meta
myself.
there.
I am one with myself. Anyway, today, what are we talking about? We're talking about Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. It's the new Netflix documentary. Well, it kind of came out it came out a month or so ago. Um,
It's been a minute.
and yeah, it's been a minute. But last Netflix documentary we talked about was Tiger King. Was what, a year ago when quarantine first started, and we
Yeah, that
figured, you
was a
know what,
while
let's
ago.
let's go into another documentary that everybody's talking about. So basically, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel tells the story of college student and tourist Elisa Lam, and how she vanishes, leaving behind all her possessions in her hotel room. The Cecil Hotel grows in infamy. And personally, I had heard about this story like, I don't know, maybe a year ago or less than that. And I was freaked out. So I definitely had some trepidation going into this documentary, but I want to know what you both thought going into it. Uh, Alex, what did you think going into it at first?
Well, as a woman in the 20th century, I have watched plenty of crime documentaries. So I knew actually all about the case in the Cecil Hotel. And even speaking of which, this is called The Babysitter. It is the new serial killer book I'm reading. It is about a person who travels around with their babysitter, not knowing that they're the one of a notorious serial killer back in the 1970s. I'll explain more about that book and where I got it from and stuff. But the Cecil Hotel documentary was interesting. I was excited to see if there was any new developments or anything because it is one of the top cases that happened at the Cecil Hotel. Unfortunately, it is not the only death that has occurred there or suicide that has occurred there, unknowing what her circumstance was. So I was excited to know if there was going to be any new development going in, and trying to figure out like what they brought to the table compared to like the other documentaries or stories that I've heard about her case and the Cecil Hotel. So, what about you, Jerome? What did you think going in?
uh, Hold on one sec. I'm just looking up an HBO true crime documentary that this reminds me of.
Jerome, Jonathan, I know you don't like spooky stuff. Um, did this scare you at all?
So I would say I like spooky stuff, but it's just that the real stuff gets me more than the fake
Right.
stuff. There was, if anyone watches SNL, there was the SNL sketch a few weeks ago where it talks about it's a musical number, and just all these women are enjoying all of these crime documentaries that have all of these horrific, details. And I would have to say I am not one of those people who eats up a crime documentary. I very much go into it with a lot of caution, just because it's a real story, and I feel like I could distance myself from the Hollywood stuff. But I have to say, these types of documentaries do interest me so much, especially ones like this, where some of the details just line up so perfectly, and the circumstances surrounding Elisa Lamb's death are just so bizarre, which really draws me in. But also, I have to look at it with like a foot away as well.
Mm.
I
Um,
absorb every detail. I love crime documentaries and going to the SNL thing at the end when she was like, I love baking shows. I do too. I will die on the hill of the Great British Bake Off. Sometimes I can't understand what they're saying, but I always love the mental breakdowns they're having. You know why? Because they are more restrained than Americans. Americans will just start crying and screaming. these people, like, their internal frustration is hilarious. They'll start getting like so tense, and it's like, oh my god, does it like explode or something? They're like holding it in so strongly. I get worried for them.
So you're saying 1 minute you're watching someone get stressed over the frosting on a cupcake, the next minute you're listening to someone talk about someone getting stuffed in a suitcase.
I mean, in all fairness, both of those things can turn really bad really quickly if you're not careful.
It's true. It's
You
true.
can wind up in the suitcase, or you can wind up getting caught, or you can wind up with really bad frosting. That's what you're known for. On
both are horrible things. Jerome, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I going into this, I don't know, I'm not familiar with this case. So it was what is it called? New experience to me. I'd never heard of the Cecil Hotel until now.
Really?
It reminded me, watching the documentary though, reminded me of just the way it's structured as a docuseries in general. Reminds me of I Love You Now Die, which is about the Michelle Carter case, in which her I can't find his name right now. But it's about the girl who told her boyfriend to kill himself.
Oh yeah, through text and everything, right?
Yes, which his name was, I think it was Conrad something.
Yeah,
Conrad
I remember
Roy.
it being something like that.
So the Conrad Roy case, and the way it was structured so well. One of the big things I liked about that docuseries so well is that it structured it where it was the defense side first is what you heard, which is the side that almost everyone's on, but then you also heard the or the prosecutor side first, and then the defense second. And it was really neat. It was really so I liked how this documentary was really well put together in all four of its parts, of like the police, how they handled the situation, then how the internet and social media handled it, and so on and so forth from there. I think I'm always never quite sure how it's going to work with a documentary that uses so much reenactment to tell its story. But I feel like here they did a pretty okay job. You know, it doesn't like get super dramatic and try to be like part documentary, part art film.
See, honestly, I have the opposite feeling about that, because I think they did get a little bit like
with the colors though.
With the colors, it was like a little off.
Where it gets a little weird.
Because yeah, it was just like, what are you trying to just let the man finish talking? I'm trying to hear what he has to say about the case. Why are you suddenly going into this weird, unnecessary spotty style? Like,
what drove me crazy was the constant out of focus shots of people.
Yes.
I'm just like, okay, it's one thing to have one person out of focus. It's another, or he's in focus and goes out of focus. It's another thing to just be out of focus, just in general.
I could understand. Yeah, that could be annoying, but I could see why they wanted to do that, because, you know, obviously they wanted to get actors to recreate the situation, but obviously that wasn't the actual person who was involved in the case, so they couldn't really like see their face.
Yeah, but it's not like we were going to be like, oh my God, did they really get footage? Because they made it a little bit blurry. All it was like, why does this need to be blurry? We know it's all in reenactment.
Right. But I did appreciate how they got right into the meat of the case, and they got right into Elisa Lam. You know, for anyone who maybe didn't watch the series and is listening, Elisa Lam, she was a college student from Vancouver, and she traveled down to Los Angeles just to get away by herself. And the Cecil Hotel, I believe, was her last stop in her tour of California, mini tour of California. And she didn't check out, and the hotel staff packed up her stuff. And then the hotel staff found and released this video of her doing these strange things in an elevator.
Well, first her parents filed a missing persons report.
Right.
She didn't check in because she would call often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the hotel still had her belongings and everything. The hotel staff found her last appearance at the hotel was in this elevator, and then she went to the left to outside the view of the camera. And yeah, basically they found her in the water tank, and to this day they determined that she was having a mental breakdown in an episode, and she went in the water tank to flee from something that she thought was harming her, and ultimately drowned.
Which still makes no sense at all, because why, like, then for her to then panic because she's in the water tank trying to escape somebody, then she's like, the person got out. She should have been able to get out if she was able to open up that lid, but she couldn't because she wasn't strong enough.
It wasn't, it was just open. It was misinformation that it was closed at all. It was never closed. It was always just open. So she just went in.
Then why aren't there any scratch marks or anything of panic inside the water tank?
Maybe because she assumed, like, because I don't know. But I mean, you know, it's
because like
if
ever there's a struggle or somebody panicking, realizing that's not going to open, there would have been resistance seen of her pushing or her trying to scratch, because that's an instinct for a lot of people. You see, if you watch a lot more crime documentaries, you'll see when people are stuck in places that like they thought they could escape from, you start scratching and then there's nails that come off. There was no thing. And then
she like, if she wasn't high enough to reach the ledge to even climb out, there wouldn't be scratch marks, at least not around the entrance / exit.
Right, but nowhere in that tank. You're gonna try to. She didn't try to claw out at all. That's like an instinct.
That's implying that she would have the strength after treading water for so long to dig her nails in deep enough to leave visible scratch marks. Because remember, she's swimming the whole time. That takes all of your physical being to keep yourself above
Not
water.
If you just float.
But she's not floating because she's in a state of panic. So she's trying to, like, she's thinking, like,
then she would have been clawing around. She would have been like kicking. There would have been bruising on her toes, her hands, any other part of her body. Just treading water in one place, that means you're more calmer. You can't tread water and be calm. If you're in a state of panic, you're gonna panic.
This is interesting. So it seems like we have two sides of the argument. Maybe
I can see what the cops are saying. And I don't believe it to be a suicide. I believe it the way they wrote it, which is that it's an accidental death. It's not, she didn't mean to kill herself. She didn't mean to be in that water tank and get harmed. But the circumstances are lined up in that way that it's more plausible that is the case, considering there are no
but with
sources of struggle.
With the history of cops, it's very, very likely they found somebody with a mental disorder, bipolar, which is often used as a big excuse for stuff. They said she was having a breakdown, and it's a nice, easy, clean case. That's it.
I would agree with that if her sister, who is a family member, didn't also agree that she has had mental episodes like this before due to her mental illness, where she's had the same water tanks. Maybe not in water tanks, but definitely, you know, she's had paranoid thoughts,
right? And like there's
delusions before this case, before she even arrived at the Cecil Hotel,
right? But again,
just the cops saying that,
paranoia and panic and all that stuff, which I've faced. There is always it's a natural instinct to like try to fight. And you say she's treading water, but you can't just tread water and be calm, and then she just floats down and dies. Also, she has the removal of the clothes and all her personal items that were also in the water. It was like she was almost killed outside the water tank and just kind of dumped in there. That makes more plausible way with the way there was no like fight to her. There was no fight. There was no blood or anything. She didn't bang on the water tank at all to possibly be hurt or anything.
I don't know.
Nothing like that. Yeah,
because LAPD, my thing is that
1 second.
If she was taken by somebody, my thought pattern is you're telling me out of that whole hotel where people are probably up all night because there's just screaming and whatever else happening in every other room. that nobody heard another set of footsteps or anything outside their room or a body collapse from being knocked out or whatever, because there's no sign after she leaves that elevator.
But there have been
there's no
so
sign,
many
you know.
cases like that where people are like, I never heard a thing. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's
Nope,
true.
I didn't hear
But
that.
what I'm saying is,
Like
is that
every
then,
single case is like that.
I'm saying, like, after that, then to climb all the way up to the roof, get into, like, dump her into the water tank, undress her, and on top of that, there'd be no sign of foul play at all.
I
No
mean,
one
hell,
broke in
he
the
could have
room.
just, a person
No
could have
one, like,
injected her
there's no
with
marks.
potassium. That gets out
But
of
there's
your
no
body.
prick wounds. Even if they injected her with something, there would be a puncture wound.
You
of
swallow
some
it.
kind
I
in
mean,
the body.
often, actually, if you ever heard about a nurse killing somebody, it's because they give them high doses of potassium. It's non-traceable. It mimics a heart attack. You just flat out die. Or it's a high dosage of glucose. Again, looks like you'll die. You'll go into a diabetic coma. And if somebody finds your body, they see the high sugar levels and they just think you had an undiagnosed case of diabetes. There are multiple ways to kill somebody and it not be traceable. I'm not saying they weren't there, but I could say that she may have met somebody up on the roof or something. Or somebody was already up there and, they were there and she came up and there was an instant where like they were able to get the upper hand, or she, with her paranoia or with her bipolar or however, could have fallen into a trust for this person. Or hell, it could have been somebody she knew that she met around LA or something.
So Alex, okay, let's look at some of the clues that they pointed to towards foul play. Do you think that either the guy who did the death metal, or when she came home from the bookstore, the two people that were apparently with her, or on the video, they showed someone, the shadow of someone's shoe, apparently. Do you think any of those three things could lead to possibly foul play?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you just really can't trust anybody. Although the shadow of the shoe seems stupid to me.
That seems far-fetched, just the way they
how do
showed
you
it.
I
have
thought
a
it was just
shadow?
her feet that was walking. I thought that
assumed
was
that
just
too.
her.
I was like, I'm pretty sure that's
Or
just
like,
her foot. Her
maybe
foot,
like
like
I
a shadow
figured like
from her.
maybe it was a shadow from like a light that went out further, so it created a shadow for. It just seemed weird. And also, how do you have a shadow of a shoe? Wouldn't it be a shadow of a whole? How do you just have it as a shoe? There's the pant leg or something. Like there's something more attached to it. Just you have the tip of the shoe. It could have also been a rat.
I mean, it was that quality of a hotel.
And it was in LA. I mean, it was near Skid Row, if I'm not incorrect.
In Skid Row,
it's
like
in
in the
Yeah,
middle
so
of it.
that could have been a rat or a giant roach or something. That one I think is like, that one was a reach.
Yeah.
Kind of. But
Yeah.
the Cecil Hotel, I personally didn't like the documentary. I felt like it didn't need to be 4 episodes long. They dragged it out, and it wasn't really until the 4th episode that they started presenting the actual evidences of the case.
I think they did that on purpose to try and like have
to keep
you
you
be
watching.
just as like, well, not only that, but also have you be in the same mindset as the internet people, essentially, of like, man, you know what? That is weird. Why is that? Why is this?
Mhm.
And then the last episode, they're like, actually, here's some other things that are also part of the case. You're like, okay, well, with that information, that changes everything that you set up 2 episodes ago. So
Yeah.
like,
Well, it
this
didn't
is
feel like an internet thing. It just felt like you were trying to drag it out and that you were like, but look, everything we showed you is a lie. Look at this. It's like, dude, but like, also, this case has been around since like, I believe was 2013 is when it occurred.
2013, that's when it happened.
Yeah, 2013. So it's been around for a while. You already knew the facts of the case and everything. They didn't present anything new.
I mean, at the same time, though, I've never heard of it. This is my first introduction to this case, all of these facts, all of these witnesses, all this stuff. So for me, someone like me, this is new. All of it is brand new information. And
I only heard about it. I only heard about it last year, but some of the information.
How did you hear about it last year? Like,
I think I was in one of my Wikipedia deep dives, and then I saw her name.
Dangerous.
Yeah, for real. And so I saw her name in the article about her, and then I was like, oh my gosh, this is so freaky, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like people were saying in the documentary, I can't stop thinking about this. I intentionally avoided watching the video just because I know a lot of people had said, oh, this video was so terrifying, I can't stop thinking about this. So I'm like, let me not watch this. But then I had no choice but to watch the video when I watched this documentary, because they showed it to you in flashbacks like 82 times.
Now that I've been working what's it called? Security for a while at my current job, I can say though some of the inconsistencies with the video are not as weird as people think they made it out to be in the documentary, because we have pre-recorded video for our place too. And there are times where when the video loses signal to the server, it looks like stuff is skipping time and just stuff just like cuts like an edit almost. But it's not because someone edited the footage, it's because literally like in a way it
gets
stopped
stuck.
recording and started recording
No,
at a different time
No,
period.
totally. People like base it off of like, movies they've seen where they're like, why can't you just zoom in and clear up and like, fix up her face or blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is real life. Technology
Yep.
for security in like hotels and just normal places are
Especially
crappy.
the Cecil Hotel, which is like old.
Yeah.
They probably haven't replaced that camera for decades. It's that time code is always going to be blurry because it's a blurry. It's old.
It's from a while.
And this is a recording of a recording. Like, you know what I mean?
And it's been recorded multiple times too.
Right. So like the cops have the real deal version. The whole point of them releasing the footage was just to be like, look, this is what she looks like. This is the last time anyone saw her alive, and this is what she was wearing. If you have seen this girl in this area, let us know. Like, tell us what you think. Where was her last whereabouts? Did you see her in your store maybe or something before that? Whatever. And they took it to the new extreme of like analyzing every little piece of this little one video.
Maybe it wouldn't have been such a. I think it would have been a big case because of the weirdness of thing. But it's also the Cecil Hotel. I mean,
yeah, which
so
was a whole thing in and of itself. Because
yeah,
the more
in general,
what was it?
The hotel was a character in the story, essentially.
Yeah. The hotel manager kept going to bat for the Cecil Hotel, and I was just like, look, all I'm saying is y'all should have been shut down if it were me.
First of all, she was the former manager, so it was a little weird. Why she? Yeah, you have nothing to lose anymore. You could just tell it all, but maybe that's really how she feels.
I think it's a thing of like it's one of those things where you don't want to, because a lot of these events happened on her watch when she was the current manager, so you don't want to make it seem like you weren't like trying to do your best.
But the thing it wasn't, because in like the 1920s, a guy shot himself in his hotel room when he was reconciling with his wife. Another time, the Black Dahlia was there right before her murder, getting drinks. The notorious Night Stalker killer there, he got some of his victims from there back in the 80s. Multiple people have been killed, murdered, suicide, been raped there. So this hotel clearly has got something going on, and they do not have good like security system knowledge, and none of those people were caught because the Night Stalker guy, like he was staying there when he was on his killing spree. So like clearly nobody heard a thing when he was doing shit, coming home at weird times. I don't know how it is after you kill somebody. The fact of I'm assuming it's like an adrenaline rush because that's like their thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, point is, yeah. So it's like clearly this hotel should not be a hotel that existed after the Night Stalker guy, which again back in the 80s, and then after that there was like more cases of like murders and like people from Skid Row disappearing too, and they were like, oh, they're probably dying at the sea. There was like things about, yeah, you live on Skid Row, you're gonna die at the Cecil Hotel. They take victims there.
The thing about it too is that the whole time the former manager is just like, oh well, the Cecil Hotel, it has this dark history, but I feel like it could be fixed up or whatever. I'm like, it can't be, because you keep trying, because unfortunately you can't erase not only the history, but you also can't erase the Cecil Hotel from the Cecil Hotel, because she tried.
Yeah, they called it like the main
The
street.
Stay on Main.
Stay
or
on
whatever.
Main.
Stay on Main.
So it's like,
Which they still
no.
had the Cecil Hotel as well. They just added Stay on Main to
I
it,
think
but they were all the same building.
I mean, that hotel figuratively, and I feel literally, has ghosts in it that cannot be gotten rid of.
Yeah. And
it has
it's
an
And now
ominous
they're
air.
trying. Now it's been bought by someone else who's gonna. They said at the end of the documentary, half of it's gonna be low income housing and half of it's gonna be a luxury hotel with a
I'm not
rooftop.
staying.
Exactly, with rooftop. They said the new
Why
manager wants to
not?
have a rooftop like party scene with a waiting pool. How insensitive is
Next
that?
to the low income housing? How
Apparently,
big is this property? How can you
I mean,
have
it looks
both
like a pretty
that?
big building, at least big enough to have those things. It's just, it is a bit insensitive though, of like, someone drowned up here and you're gonna have a waiting pool.
And also, again, you're right by Skid Row, and then you're making low income housing, but then you want to make a hotel or high resort area right next to it.
just tear the building down, make
That
a
is very
factory or something, or a parking lot, and that's it.
Actually, I'm more for the
Well,
parking lot because the
here's the
factory, somebody's
thing.
going to die in the factory. Or
That's true.
Or they have
I
like
do-
a clothing one and the mannequins come to life at night.
I just feel like they should close it down as a hotel, make it a shelter or something. Because
Yes,
the
yes, or
biggest issue, and they do talk about it a little in here, but it's, it's mostly focused on the horror of the whole situation. But they talk about it here of like the homeless problem on Skid Row is very real. And here it is, you have a whole hotel building. I get it. You want to make money. Originally, it was meant to be a hotel for business people and all that stuff. I get all that. However, I think after all of these cases, all of this bad juju, as many voodoo people would probably say about this building, you just need to cut your losses and turn it into a shelter. Help the people around Skid Row, because of course it is like a historical landmark, and a lot of people from Skid Row probably do stay there, who are homeless, who need a place to stay because it's low rent. But just turn it into like a nice place that they can go, be warm at night, have a roof over their heads, maybe get some food, that sort of thing. Do not continue to make this a hotel. Clearly, God has been telling y'all for a long time. And I told y'all don't need to make this a hotel. All right. I let the devil run in through there and he just has his way with it.
And even then,
I'm not gonna step in. Y'all need to y'all just need to let it go.
There is something at the Cecil Hotel that like has this, because there's like a bridge, and I want to say I don't recall where it is. There's an actual bridge where when people with their dogs walk over it, the dogs commit suicide. They'll jump right off the bridge the moment they get on it. Yeah, there are places in this world.
Well, there's like the Japanese suicide gardens.
Yeah, the forest.
Like the suicide forest, right? Where it's like people go there and commit, and it's happened a lot. It's like there's some places where darkness just resides.
And like to a point, you're like, I don't know if they're going there to commit suicide or they're going there to find out and they die. Like maybe some things are better blocked off, because like I know that forest, suicide forest, they have patrol people that try to get people out before nightfall, because they believe if you stay during nightfall, that's when you die. Some mystical thing can come get you, or the voices of the forest, you'll end up listening to them. Which I'm like, maybe there is voices of the forest going on there. Clearly, there's something going up. And I feel like it's almost the same with the Cecil Hotel. There's been enough murders and suicides there that, like, there is something literally telling you, hey, don't come into this building. Don't mind that bell. It is just a little toy ball. That is not helping the situation at this time. That's like, don't come back. And people are just blatantly ignoring it.
Well,
when they open up the new when they open up the new like luxury hotel or whatever, they're still gonna have the same problem. People are still gonna be coming to the hotel just so they can experience it. They're still gonna have the problem of having to patrol all these security around the premises so people don't access unauthorized unauthorized areas so that they can see where Elisa Lam was and everything, they're still going to have the same problem. So why not repurpose the hotel for something else? Because obviously the hotel part is not really working.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, I think the biggest thing too is that, uh, when you have the manager talking about, like, when they were bringing up, like, and I think the family did have a small right to sue the hotel. I didn't agree with them on the whole idea of, like, well, she was mentally struggling, so y'all should have done something. It's like, we're a hotel. We're not a therapist office. Like, we deal with hundreds of people that come through this lobby every day.
That's
It's
like the
hard for
parents that try to ditch their kids off with like a waiter or like somebody in a store. Hey, can you watch my kid? I have to do this. And it's like, no, that's your child. I'm working.
right. Like, my job is just to make sure that they have clean sheets and, like, the water works. Like, that's my job. My job is not to care for them on that level. However,
However,
the one thing though they should have fixed
the water
is,
tank.
yeah, like the fact that the lid was open, the fact that, like, there is a bell on the emergency exit. Okay, is there anybody around? Like, if that goes off though, does that send a signal to see your security guard, if you have one, even, or your maintenance person, to say, hey, there's no signal going off on here. Someone must be up on the roof or whatever. Because if that was the case, someone would have went up there and then checked. Because it's like, it doesn't make sense to have an alarm on the door if nobody's going to go check it until, God forbid, the morning after, at the
And
earliest.
it's skeptical if there was an alarm on it. It wasn't
Right.
ever like fully conveyed to the audience that there was an alarm on the door, because the one guy who studied the case, the internet sleuth, he said when he went up there, he pushed open the door and there was never an alarm.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, but again, this is also the other problem. This is the one thing where I was like, that's your first problem, is that when they hired this lady, she was like, I've never managed a hotel before. I'm like a businesswoman. It's like, okay, that's the first problem. You do not hire a business person with no hotel experience to manage a hotel, especially one from hell. Where people are dying every other week. So that's the worst person to hire for this type of job. Not because they're incapable of doing the job, but rather they might not have the know-how of things they should really be thinking about. Like, a person who is a hotel manager or has been a hotel manager, they would immediately think to themselves, okay, are the water tanks locked up? No. Lock those up.
Lock them up.
Because even if it's not a body, God forbid a bird dies or something in midair and falls into the water tank or whatever.
Water for the hotel that would just be dangerous in general for like infections of people.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were saying that at the end. They were like if
you
anybody
could
has
somebody,
access, exactly. If anybody has access to this
know.
water tank, then you could just poison the entire hotel guests. And so in speaking of people who were associated with the hotel, I want to talk about the couple who were visitors, and I forget where they were from, but I think they were from the UK.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and they stayed at the hotel. Do you blame them for not essentially doing their research? Because I mean, this is 2013, so Google was available. Do you blame them, or do you think, okay, they're international travelers, it was a cheap hotel, and this was their only option to stay at?
I don't blame them, because if I blame them, I have to also blame Elisa too, and anybody else who was staying there at the time. Like, all of those people, whether they knew the history or not, probably a lot of kids who are just like tourists going through, they're just like, in their mind, it's like, it's a cheap hotel. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't think to look and see like how many people have been killed here.
Yeah, who delves into the history of the hotels like that? Because like, all right, so when I went to England back when I was like 22 or something, I found just a cheap hotel that was near the train. That way I could get in and out. When I got there, it was way smaller than I thought. Like, the bed sheets were kind of dirty. I had to ask for new bed sheets. You just quickly go off what's online. So like, I didn't look into the hotel or anything. I didn't see how many rooms were in there or anything. I was like, look, this is what I can afford. It's practical. It's by the train. It's easy directions to everything, and like I had a plan laid out around it. So yeah, I never delved deep, and I was a single woman internationally traveling. So being a couple, you I feel like you don't have to have that big of fear because you're together. So you're definitely not going to go do that research into the hotel about like where are the exits, where's this and that, how many people have died, how many crimes have been committed within this decade. Is it safe to go within this decade time frame? Seems there are only 3 murders every 5 years. Has it been the 5 years yet?
When you're looking up a
Yeah,
hotel on Priceline, they don't pull up like the rap sheet of this hotel. By the way, I know it's a great deal, right? But also you should know that like 6 people died there, like just in the last 3 months. I just want to let you know that. Anyway, Priceline, come on by.
I mean, technically,
Also,
when
who
you're
uses
selling the
Priceline?
house,
I do. I use that to get my
I use
airplane
Kayak.
tickets.
I use hotels.com.
I use
Anyway.
I will
but
say,
I
if
also,
you ever have to buy a house, though, they need to disclose somebody's
how
been
many
murdered
people
in there.
who have, if any, has been murdered? Yeah.
Only murdered.
I-
It's perfectly fine if they died of natural causes. They don't have to disclose that.
What if it's fictional murder? Because the
Who's
house
fictionally
from
been murdered?
American Horror Story house. That's an actual house you can buy.
Okay, no. Anyway.
That doesn't count, and you know it doesn't count. Go on, Jonathan. What were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say I agree with you guys. I don't blame them because especially they made the point we're only gonna be sleeping and washing up here, so we can get
Although-
past the sticky floor and everything.
Which is
I
exactly
blame
what I
them.
did.
I blame them because of as soon as the water is dirty, I'm not using it to
Yes.
brush my teeth and take a bath. I'm immediately
No.
heading downstairs like, hey, y'all got to fix that.
Was the
And-
water actually dirty, or was it that it tasted weird?
Both. It was
I know
a
it
weird
tasted
color.
weird.
It was a brownish. They mentioned it was a brownish color and that it tasted funny. I wouldn't.
But-
First of all, I
but
wouldn't
real
drink
quick,
it if it was.
Defending them with that. America has been known not to have clean water in a lot of places.
Also, I will say there's a place at my job. They use recycled rainwater. So like in
Gross.
one of their office buildings. So the water looks yellow, but it's just because it's rainwater. Not
And
like it's filtered rainwater.
I had a cousin who got her water from actually I know quite a few people who did well water, which smells kind of funky.
Yes, it does.
And because it comes from like a well which has like a lot of sediment in it, it like makes everything around the bathtub look rusted, and it'll actually end up coloring your hair a little bit with a red tint.
All right, well I'll take it back.
Yeah, so like
I'll take it.
so like I get with the tasting weird, I wouldn't drink it or use it to brush my teeth, but like showering it, I'd probably get through it because I'm like I need a shower. I feel gross. Just because again, America doesn't have the best water system.
I would have the moment that I really was fascinated by the moment the news came out that she had died in the water tower. And then all the hotel guests, you see all the hotel guests getting interviewed and all the people taking pictures of them. I was amazed at how calm they were when they were talking about how funny the water tasted and looked, because immediately, they knew that they had drank the water that
a dead person.
Exactly.
Maybe it was like shock because you're just like I didn't. I mean, I knew I ingested something, but it's like I couldn't have. That moment of disbelief where you're like, no, it didn't happen.
Right.
But we know it did, but no.
And that was the part that stuck with me the most when I first read about this story. So to see the actual people who were affected by it and who complained about the water, it was really fascinating. And speaking of water, can we talk about the parallels between this and the movie Dark Water?
I have not seen Dark Water. I don't
know.
But they mentioned it in the movie how or in the documentary how.
Oh, that must be the part. Spoilers, y'all. I did fall asleep a little bit at the end of one of the episodes. I can't even remember which one it was, but I know that for a while I just like checked out.
Well, basically, I'll give you a summary. Basically, plot of Dark Water. It's a horror film. Who's in it?
I'm looking that up actually. Well, originally it was a remake from a Japanese film in 2002, and
mhm.
then uh hold on. The film is a remake of the 20. God, it's hard to say things now without the 2020 part of it. 2002. There we go. Japanese film of the same name, which is turned based on a short story, Floating Water. Oh, it's written by the person who wrote the Ring trilogy. It has Jennifer Connelly, Tim Roth. Not very many actors that are still like are pronounced in the front anymore.
Wait, I thought the movie that they mentioned in the movie had like who did it have in it? The movie that they mentioned is Dark Water. Yeah. Oh yeah, that is the right movie. That's
Yeah.
interesting. But anyway, the parallels were that basically they showed the shot of the elevator, them getting in the elevator, the mom, the daughter, and the dude. The water is black at the hotel they're staying at, or the apartment they're in, and the little girl dies in the water tank.
Okay.
And so basically their rationale was that, oh, someone could have tried to carry out a crime
which, by
similar
the
to
way,
this
they
film.
show in that film and the Japanese one, the little girl struggled and she made marks.
Yeah, but it's a fictional story anyway.
I'm just saying, you're gonna panic. What are you gonna do? You're gonna slam or you're gonna scratch?
I'm just saying, like, I don't know. It's always because it's everybody responds to any situation differently. So I never am going to say that every person would react to any situation the same exact way as everybody else, because it's no different than another. And this is also a documentary of I forget what the case is called, but the movie based off it's called Compliance, which is a story about this girl who worked at McDonald's or some restaurant,
fast food restaurant, yeah.
And somebody called the establishment pretending to be a police officer and told the manager that she was like a drug mule and to like strip her down and do all these terrible things to her. And a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's dumb. I wouldn't just believe someone told me he was a police officer." It's like,
yeah, but I would believe somebody would do that because people are absolutely stupid.
But see, that's what I'm saying. You don't like, you can never guess what anybody is going to do at any given time, no matter what their mental state is or what said had happened, because you weren't in that person's head to know what.
Yeah, but it can kind of be predicted because they don't well, if you see the movie they don't really tell you, but he did it to about 7 people. He called 7 different restaurants with burner phones and they all did the same thing. So clearly there is a track and a way humans are, just listening to what they believe is an authoritarian figure on the phone. So that is a natural reaction to an authoritarian figure that you hear or that you believe, and you follow instructions without thought and without question. That's a reaction, and that is what they're doing. So, same exact result.
I think the other big thing that interested me in this is, it was one of those things where I always think about this when I think about internet culture, of like this idea of you want to help, and I get that, but at the same time, you are not a detective. Like, you haven't gone to school or any of this. You haven't done any of the training. Like, even private eyes have to, and I know because I wanted to
yeah, they do actually have to
be a PI. Like, they have to go through some training first before you just become a private investigator. You don't just like say, I'm a private investigator now and get a badge. Like, so, or pardon or whatever, the slip they get basically that approves them. But anyway, so these internet sleuths, as they call themselves or whatever, some of them I'm just like, all right, y'all are just like, y'all are just diving in to stuff without any basis past just this feels weird. I believe
Oh,
this feels weird. It's like, okay, yes, going off a hunch is something cops and private investigators do a lot. So I'm not knocking you for it. However, most of those hunches, when they know they're wrong, they don't double down and just be like, no, but the hunch was real though. And I'm gonna prove it with this extra thing that also is weird. And it's like, no, that's also not weird. It's like, no, but for real though, it's like, just stop bullying people on the internet.
although, okay, that can sometimes be true. Yes, people might take it a little bit too far, but a
And
lot
don't
of times when
apologize to that
people
poor
are
death metal man.
no. Okay, no. Anyway,
You know what? I
I
will
will get
say
onto
really
it,
quick
but
though, death metal, like heavy metal people are like, they're so mean and stuff. The sweetest people I have ever met have been heavy metal people. They have been always the nicest people. There was one time, uh, my sister and me were like drunk going home, and this like a-hole, it was around like Memorial Day or Flags Day. We were living in like Florence. Like pulls a flag out of the ground, one of the poles, and just throws it on the ground and actually kicks it. I'm like, screw you, man. So we're putting it back. But Christian was kind of drunk and she couldn't figure out where it went. And it's like biker heavy metal dude comes up. He's like, "Are you guys okay?" And we're like, "We're just trying to put this back." And he's like, "Oh, I'll help you guys." And like he was just super sweet about everything. We were like talking to him, and then like his metal heavy chicks come up and they start talking about, and they were like insanely sweet people.
I mean, have you ever seen an interview of the Insane Clown Posse? Those guys are really actually kind of
Yeah,
cool.
but those
They're
kind of
cool
people actually
dudes.
do. Yeah, they're actually really cool. What sorry, Jonathan.
I was gonna say, yes, sometimes people do take the investigation too far, but when people are really passionate about something, they will dive into every single aspect of it. And I'm mainly thinking about reality TV, and I hate to bring it back to this, but on some of these reality TV shows, I'm mainly thinking of like Big Brother, The Bachelor. When they release their contestants, the fans of the show become like, they put on their PI hat, they dive into every single person's social media, their work history, their life history, every single tweet they've liked, every single Instagram post, every single thing. They dig into it to find something juicy. So when people are really passionate about something, you can absolutely get them to become PIs and find things that you may not necessarily have found out on your own, even if it is your job to find those things.
But is it that a good thing though? Is it? Because
Well,
then
I
those
mean,
people start thinking that they know you or whatever, or at worst, risk their own lives. You have people going to the Cecil Hotel to go dig up clues. Grant, like, and I want you to know, a police officer is protected when he goes to the Cecil Hotel because he's a police
Or
officer. He
she.
or she is a police officer. But if you go and you're just a civilian and you get shanked up, just so you know, you just a civilian
Shanked
who just
up.
got shanked up. Like that's
Shanked up. Why do we have to keep saying shanked up?
what is shanked up exactly? Because
you're getting shanked.
I'm thinking of like you're getting almost like hung up, like you somehow went through a hole and now you're like hanging. I'm thinking like that, or are you talking about like getting shanked?
No, you're
It's
getting shanked.
all of a sudden like
all right? You get
somebody from Skid Row who's having a PTS flashback comes out of nowhere and just
That's what I'm saying.
that's what
If
you
that
see.
happens to you at the Cecil Hotel, we'll call the cop. Now that was the one thing I did agree with when the hotel manager was like, "Yeah, we could have called the cops, but there's no guarantee they would have came in time." And I fully believe that because there's plenty of neighborhoods, both in LA, and all over California, all over this country, where you can call the cops. They ain't gonna come for a minute. Like you probably gonna be dead by the time they get here.
Especially since again, it was so close to Skid Row, they probably weren't.
Yeah, they probably weren't gonna come. Like they weren't
Yeah.
gonna come at all. But I'm just saying, it's just at what point is too far if you're just a civilian. Like I get it. You
Well,
want to
really
help.
quick, going back to what Jonathan was saying about with like Big Brother, and that's exactly how we met our new friend Kyle.
That's true.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it
Well, I
was
didn't
that
meet him, but you
whole
guys met him.
we met him. You need to meet him because he's a very big Marvel fan, and I'm like, you would get along with Jerome so well. But that's kind of going with your saying, Jerome, and Jonathan, what you're saying. Once they let out that cast list for Big Brother, all these fans went crazy. They thought they found, or was it the cast list? They thought they found him.
Yeah, they had a
Yeah.
cast switch out, and yeah.
Which, that found him. And luckily, this Kyle didn't have like a big history of like bad things he was hiding that could have been exposed, and which I had even asked him about with cancel culture going on. Were you scared when you first woke up and just saw that, you had blown up out of nowhere? And he's like, yeah, I was. And that's that whole fear, like, had they could have like messed with somebody's life who had nothing to do with it in such a quick amount of time. It was a night span. But luckily Kyle was cool with it. The fans were okay, and like everything settled down really quickly. But you're right. There's a point where it goes a little too far, and now they've involved somebody who had nothing to do with anything. This guy wakes up, all of a sudden his phone's going out of nowhere, and he has to wonder, did I make an insensitive comment? Did something happen? You're suddenly going back through all these things in your head, like, whoa, fuck, what did I do? And so like I get what you're saying, and there are sometimes in cases where people have definitely tried going too far. They've, you know, taken footage of like a person's last moments in life and placed it on the internet to be like, look, this is what really happened. And it's like, dude, the family's still alive. They didn't need to see that. Or you know what? They may not have wanted the people or press to see that. It's like you also have to remember the family's still in existence. And I think with this case and it being closed, the fact that Netflix kind of made a documentary on it was kind of a little bit sleazy.
It feels like pandering because
Because
it feels like a letdown. Because I was like, the whole time I was watching the documentary, I was like, okay, like immediately after the first, I think it's the second episode, you find out she's in the water tank, right? Is the second?
I think it's like the end of it too.
Yeah. So when after that second episode, when they find out they're in the water tank, I'm like, okay, then what's the fourth part about? Because I feel like the third's gonna be the end, right? Like, because there's what else is there to talk about? Like, I feel like because I already assumed based off of the evidence that they gave in the beginning, not knowing anything about the case, I was like, it sounds a lot like she's like it was an accident. I don't know how. That's what the documentary is here to unfold, but it sounds closer to an accident than it does a murder. But I didn't have all the facts yet. Then by the time I hit the end of the documentary, I was just like, I feel like this could have been wrapped up not only in 3 episodes, but also feels like you're wasting time with a lot of these internet sleuth people who most of the information and background they give doesn't add as much to the story as I think this documentary thinks they do. On top of that, it was really weird to have, because the one dude who was just like, he went to the court case and to give some background, like, all right, that's cool. The one guy who was like, yeah, my friend went to the grave and put his hand on it for me on my behalf, and that made me feel better. I'm like, all right, weirdo, like, you don't even know this girl, you've never met her in your life, you don't know this family. That's kind of weird, dude. My opinion, but whatever.
Well, I knew a guy who almost got killed or who almost became a victim of John Wayne Gacy. I don't say I feel closer to him or John Wayne Gacy. I knew, yeah, it was my history teacher. He was very excited to tell me that story. I apologize. No, it was his brother who was almost taken. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, but like I had gotten into a conversation. He told me this story. He was weirdly excited about it, mainly because it was like the 7th grade, and I told him, I'm like, yeah, I really like learning about serial killers. The thing starts off young with women. We like learning about this type of stuff. And I'm like, and in fact, some of my favorite thing to learn about is actually cults, but I'm like, some of my favorite serial killers are definitely Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy.
Well, speaking of, Alex, they're making a new Jeffrey Dahmer movie.
Yeah,
or no, it's American Horror Story.
Starring
the new
Peters.
Yes,
yeah. It's another American
and Niecy Nash. It's going to be the new season of American Horror Story.
Shouldn't that have ended with Apocalypse?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
American Horror Story is over.
Isn't it?
Yeah, no. American Horror Story is still going.
They went with like the 19-something 80s like style murders and horror films. I think is the last season I was thinking about watching, but now I can't.
I'm mixing it up because they just announced the new season of American Horror Story, and at the same time they also announced that Ryan Murphy is making a movie or series based on Jeffrey Dahmer. I think it's a series.
I think it's a
Well,
movie. I don't know. Either way, it's
the
happening.
thing, well,
Yeah.
the thing I think people a lot miss with Jeffrey Dahmer, I, right off the bat, I want to say I do not condone Jeffrey Dahmer. I do not like this man. He is an evil man, a heartless man, and I feel terrible for what happened with his victims. And like nobody, because they actually have tours for the spots where he picked up his victims. They have like people say they're in love with Jeffrey Dahmer and like all this stuff. Absolutely not. This man was pure evil. He
I
was
mean,
awful.
it's the same with the Night Stalker. He got a bunch of marriage proposals
So did
after he
like
went to jail.
Charles Manson and all that. But what I'm saying is I'm more fascinated with the topic of Jeffrey Dahmer, and I think a lot where people lose the thing, they kind of just focus on the way he used to eat his victims and like all this stuff. But he actually kept a lot of his victims' pieces because he wanted to build a sex slave. He was creating a Frankenstein monster. And Jeffrey Dahmer actually started studying medicine and other stuff to start assembling a human being. And I think that is a bigger and interesting and more messed up part of the story than eating. Because cannibalism, again, I do not condone cannibalism. Nobody should eat anybody. Well, unless it's the last means of survival. Then that's just how it is.
To
That's not
clarify,
illegal.
to clarify, it will be a series, and it's called Monster: The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. It will be more of a psychological thriller than a horror, and is said to chronicle its subject's multi-year killing spree from the perspective of one of his victims.
I just wanted to focus on more than just the eating aspect because he did commit torture. He was creating all these designs, these mechanisms and stuff. And in fact, the lawyer who had to defend him, he drew her like I forgot what it was. He drew her an actual like machine looking thing that was like, oh yeah, this is how you can hold a victim on a napkin and just gave it to her on a piece of paper and signed it. It was like, here you go. My own original
I'm
design.
telling you now, Alex, I feel like they probably won't, only because it's a thing of, and this is more just from knowing Hollywood perspective, is that they're
Yeah.
going to go for the lowest thing, and because if they go too deep, the
It's gonna
argument
just
will
be
be,
about the
are they like giving Jeffrey Dahmer more credit than he should get, being that he is a serial killer?
You're right. They're probably just gonna focus on the raping, the murdering, and the cannibalism.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's what I'm like saying with these serial killers and like even these cult leaders. There's some twisted thing behind. It's not just about the bloodlust. There's another thing that's there, and I think a lot of crime documentaries will miss that, especially when they're kind of produced by Hollywood and stuff. That the way how these people became the way they were almost, and also like why they started, what like kind of why they thought like, I can start doing this.
I would say watch my I haven't seen it, but I hear it's really good. Is watch or read, because it's also a comic. My Friend Dahmer,
I've
I
seen
have
the
been meaning to
movie.
pick that up.
which it's a story told from the perspective, like just before his years of doing his killing spree, of a kid who was in his high school and knew him. And I haven't read the book or watched the movie, but I've heard that it's a better deep dive into Jeffrey Dahmer from a different perspective than just the murderer,
Yeah,
and
because
more of his home life.
because yes, he was a murderer and like all that stuff, but he was also other things too. And I think they ignore that. Yeah, you're right. Just to show him as like, again, he was a monster, but like he was a bigger monster than I think people realize because he was an actual intelligent monster as well. Same with like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy used the whole facade of being a family man and the clown thing. And same way with like the cult leader, like with Georgetown, where he gave this like appeal of like, we have home and community and faith. There's other things than just being like the murderer, the intelligence that it goes with being a murderer and a serial killer too. I think they need to show that. That way you can understand a lot more about like, okay, they're smart, so I need to be smarter.
I think that's
And
I have a working theory of why so many women, both single and not single, enjoy serial killer documentaries, and I think that is a key to it. And that a lot of women
oh,
like
no.
women need
It
to
is
protect.
absolutely that. I learned multiple ways of how I would get out of a situation, and also
Yeah.
how would I kill somebody better.
Well,
That is
And
another
because
thought.
not
a
so
lot
much
of
that, but I've just meant like to see the signs of somebody who maybe, because you
Yeah.
hear it all the time. The many
So
women who are with a lot of these guys, before they find out they are serial killers, are like, I didn't think he was like that. He would always
so
seem so nice and so
actually,
cool. And it's like,
here's a
maybe if
here's a
you
big
hear
tip.
more about it, you can see the signs.
Here's a big tip to actually to all the female fans or listeners or whoever. Here's a big tip to know if a man, may be trying to kidnap you or something. If a man asks you for help with something, you can't really trust that. If a man you don't know, because that is how a lot of Ted Bundy's victims were caught. He seemed distressed or something. And there is something in the core of women that we as women want to help. And when we see somebody who looks like they're physically hurt or they do need something or they're struggling, we want to help. And that's how Ted Bundy got a lot of his victims. He pretended to limp, he had crutches, or he pretended to be hurt. A lot of serial killers will have that activation where it's like, oh, I'm vulnerable at this moment. And usually men do not ask for help from women. Because sadly there is that underlining thought in most men, of course not all men, that women physically are inferior. So they're not going to
Or
ask for help with stuff.
I would say it's the vice versa, that it's a man doesn't want to seem weak to a woman,
Yeah,
especially not a woman
absolutely.
he's trying to pursue. He doesn't want to seem like he's a weak person.
Precisely. So to all the female listeners, if a stranger in a parking lot either approaches you or, just ask for your help, don't do it. Say, I'll go get somebody else to help you. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if they do or do not need help. It's your safety that should always be the thing on the front line. It's your safety that should always matter above everything else. Whether you think somebody may or may not be hurt or something, you need to put your life before everything, because you don't know what's going to happen. With all these documentaries, I will say it's a kind of a nice view into seeing like the different acts employees they did use, which is again something I was like, I think a lot of documentaries about serial killers are missing, or crimes and stuff like that, is how they were able to lure the victims and the psychological reasons many of the victims were able to be manipulated into this. And that's like a big thing. And with the Cecil Hotel documentary, going back to that, it didn't really have that.
Give us your final thoughts, Alex.
But they did use a psychological manipulation to what I believe is making a clearer case, and simply that she's bipolar. She was off her meds. Simple as that. It's not though. Because I am bipolar, and there's one of the reasons I don't believe that in its fullest. I do believe she may have been having a mental breakdown or things like that. But when you're on very strong medications and things of that nature, they take a few days to get out of your system. And the medication, yeah, there were some missing, and the bottle was fuller than it should, but it wouldn't have had that reaction right away. There is signs of like detoxing from your body the same way any other drug. That's why I'm like, I feel like they're using her mental disorders as an scapegoat to make everything just a pretty bow. And of course, everybody's going to believe that because there's such a lack of misunderstanding of mental health in this world, you know. I didn't like the documentary though, just because of the setup. I think it was trying to be like kind of like almost, yeah,
recreation. There were too many recreations and stuff like that.
I was waiting for the dun dun music to come at any time.
And it did. There were points where I noticed that it was like where something would be revealed and you would hear a boom.
Yeah, they put like background music. It's like, being as I know the case though, I was like, it's not as dramatic as you think though. Like that, the water tasted weird. There wasn't a need for a dun like that. or
There's
that
like
they're
multiple
like,
angles,
yeah,
like you could see the water dripping on the camera lens and everything. I
yeah,
was just
which
like,
was
man,
like,
this
that's
is
like what college grade like style document. We're gonna give it the perspective of the
it's
glass,
more
and it's like,
just this is like having a bunch of footage, and it's like killing your darlings of like, okay, what is the focus of this documentary though? Are you trying to make it like look
it
really
was a
cool, or are you trying to
lot
tell the
of
information?
B-roll, is what it
Yeah.
was. Just a lot of B-roll. Cause yeah, and so it was like you didn't need to have this go out in 4 episodes. I think maybe it would have been less. I don't want to say comical, but it was kind of comical, the setup of it, not the actual topic. If it, stretching it into 4 episodes, it's like this just feels like you're making a parody of a crime documentary is what feels like is going on right now.
What would be your grade
I would give
if
it
you
a
have
D.
one?
A D. There are so many other better crime documentaries out there. There's better Cecil Hotel documentaries, and about her, of course, there's a lot of topics podcasts and stuff like that. So like a D. It doesn't present anything new. It's a lot of B-roll, and I don't trust cops.
Yeah,
And they gave them a whole episode. I don't trust them.
I do agree that it was very B-rolly, and you can tell where the recreations were and where the real footage was. Where I feel like in some documentaries they would make it more seamless, where you couldn't tell if something was real or fake, you know. And but what I did appreciate was I felt like they told the narrative. What I think the storyline that they did tell was told in a consumable way. I think it was very easy to digest all the points, whereas in where you're watching some documentaries, you're like, oh, why are they going to this point now? Why are they going to this point now? I think it was told in a cohesive way. Um, Not really about the documentary, but like I really like that these documentaries are taking advantage, especially on Netflix, they're taking advantage of the fact that the victims specifically have documented their story essentially. Like in the case of Elisa Lam, she had all of these Tumblr posts. And I remember I watched a documentary on Netflix many months ago. I think it was called An American Murder. That's what I wrote down at least. But it was the man who killed his wife and two very young daughters.
Oh yeah, I have seen that one.
Have you
Yeah.
seen that one as well? Yeah,
Yeah.
and they just in that documentary they don't even have a narrator or interviews. It's just all footage of him coming home, acting like where's his wife and everything. And his wife has a whole bunch of videos that she posted to social media, and that tells her story. So it's like back in the old days, it used to be letters or a journal that you would find of the victims, and that would tell their story. Now it's like posts on social media or whatever, or text messages or something like that. So I think it's interesting how that has evolved and how documentary storytellers have incorporated that into the narrative. So I really like that, to get a sense of this was a real person and to get a sense of who they were in the moments leading up until their death, which as grim as it is, but it's just, I think it humanizes the person, because we could get at points we get caught up with the murder of it all. We don't actually think of the person behind it, or not behind it, but who was the victim.
That's true.
But all in
too.
all, I think, yeah, but all in all, I think I'll give this a C plus. I wasn't pumped to watch the movie, but I was very interested. And I think they told it in a cohesive way, just not in the best way they could have. And Jerome, what
I
is your
think
rating and reason for the rating?
I'm giving this a D, as well. I think I do see, like, just based off of the minor, like, I think the family testimonials and stuff. And Alex, you brought up something that I didn't think about, but they did say that there were because she was there for 4 days at the Cecil Hotel, and there were other people in other rooms that had complained about her um doing like having noises and stuff in her room, I guess, or whatever. So it is possible that she was off her meds for a couple of days, not that day, and then she had a paranoid episode. Regardless, though, at the end of the day, I think for me, whether there is some foul play and in reality, there's actually something going on, or it is as the police said, and she did have like in her and what her sister theorizes, that she did have a um mental break uh that day, or whatever the case may be. The most important thing for me that was just that the family got closure. I think that is the biggest thing, for me personally, because my biggest concern, not knowing anything about this case, was that it was going to end with, and the case is still open, and I'm just like, yeah, but that's got to be torture for her family, because it's one thing to file a missing persons report, and then you find out that your child or husband or whoever is dead or alive, either or, because then it's okay, well, I at least now know, so I can move on, as opposed to I don't know where they went, and for all I know, they could still be out there somewhere. And so I thought that was really great that they made an effort to include that in the documentary, to let people know, yes, this is a closed case. We're like, the family has moved on and been able to move on and heal. That's really cool. I also love the message of uh talking about Skid Row in here, talking about the homeless population. That's really cool. I think, though, the reason I'm giving this a D is that those things feel like minor instances in a documentary that's really trying so hard to stretch out a true crime scenario that's not even really worth 4-hour-long episodes. And you could have easily done this in 3, probably 2, if you really trimmed a lot of the fat. Um, I know
Yeah.
they're trying to get like the whole phenomenon of it, in that like the internet blew up, and this is what Twitter was saying, and all these internet people and stuff like that. But I feel like half of their contribution could be chopped down.
Yeah, when we
Into
were talking
smaller
about
chunks.
discussing this movie on the podcast, I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was a movie. So when I clicked play and saw that there was multiple episodes, I was like, "Oh, I ain't gonna
Yeah,
be able
no,
to watch this tomorrow.
I thought it
By
was a
tomorrow."
movie too. I thought it was a movie too.
No, I knew it was a
Uh,
series. I just
I am not a fan when they often do documentaries and series unless it's actually about serial killers or like cults. Not really
most of
about
the
one
time they just
particular.
Or
they
Tiger
fizzle
King.
out. Like, I think at the
There was a
best ones I've
lot to
seen.
unpack with Tiger King.
Yeah, right.
There's
Yes,
Tiger
every
King made
still.
episode
sense
got
because there was
worse.
so
Oh
Not
my
much
worse, but
God.
like
revolving around that
No, it got
culture,
worse.
that it like
There
every
was
like it but even Tiger King, once it hit the end, it kind of fizzled out, because all of the
yeah.
fun stuff that got you hooked was over. Now it's just, all right, now it's a true crime part, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, like the last two were like, look, everybody's killed somebody. They're all breaking laws down there. We don't know what's going around in Florida. We don't know what's happening, but everybody maybe just stay out of Florida. If you're saying
Like,
don't go to Florida.
it's just so like I think the best one I've seen is that one I was talking about earlier from HBO, I Love You Now Die. That's 2 parts, and it is only it's from 2 separate perspectives. So that's why it doesn't feel like it's just a waste of time. But they don't spend like 4 episodes, 2 parts explaining both sides, then a third part explaining how the internet felt, then a fourth part explaining, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta, if you're gonna do a docuseries, you gotta know that if you have enough footage to really spread it out like that, or maybe if it's better to just make it one solid movie, one solid documentary movie.
I think because they tried to make it about the Cecil Hotel, but not at the same time. They thought they could draw it out. But they were talking about one particular case, which they all admit did not have much detail to it. They didn't know if somebody was stalking her, if this was paranoia. People didn't complain about the water, but did at the same time. It was just like the evidence and like the information was actually very well compact, and there wasn't a lot of everything. You didn't need 4 episodes. everything, literally all the facts and evidence were actually laid out in the last episode.
Oh yeah, the
too.
facts for this
So
case that they're focusing on is very clear. It's all the extra stuff on top of it that
yeah,
fills out
which
this
at
running time.
the point we've all heard the well, I've heard all the conspiracy theories, I've heard all that stuff, and it's always like, yeah, okay, there was one conspiracy theory about aliens. She was going to be abducted and they dropped her in the water tank. Another one was that she played the elevator game and a demon, was the thing that killed her. Another one was that somebody was stalking her, or that, it was just a lot of them. And it's just like, no, I don't care what the internet. I'm watching this because I want to know what evidence you have, and you do it about like the internet thing, fine, or do it about the case. Don't do it both unless the internet has factored into the case at all. It's not relevant. Or if the case can't work without the internet weirdos, again, nothing. It's not relevant. Give me what's relevant. I don't care that it was a phenomenon for a while. I want to know what happened. And I was hoping for something new to be presented, because I don't know why they're making a documentary about it now. Because lots came out. The case happened in 2013. Footage came out and has been watched. And even BuzzFeed Unsolved did it. That was like their second episode.
Which they featured. They featured a clip from it.
They actually got to go to the Cecil Hotel. Yeah. So while it was still open. So it was like, I learned more from
up and everything.
Yeah, I'm like, I learned more from this about the Cecil Hotel and what happened with that whole case from Ryan. Oh crap, what's his last name? Bagara? Ryan Bagara. Which I was just watching Puppet History. And this man's like scared of everything. He was shaking. Like when he literally got into the hotel. So it was like he presented everything that was needed to know about the case. The three most popular topics of what had happened on the internet and the conspiracy theories, all within a nice 24-minute frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is, I think that's where we should end. That's our discussion
this is
on
a bit more
Cecil
of a
Hotel.
serious episode, folks, but it's like it's not much.
Half serious,
we tried to inject a little humor here and there because we like to have fun here. But
really quick though. I want to recommend my book, The Babysitter.
Go ahead.
Go get The Babysitter.
It's a really good book. I'm not done with it yet, and I try. Another frustrating thing about reading crime books, I'm trying not to look up the case about it.
So you stay in the moment of the book.
Mm-hmm. But then I got into the part where I believe it's actually about the Night Stalker killer who ends up going to the Cecil Hotel. So I think it's weirdly connected. And I actually got it when my mom was in town at a bookstore called Away with Words in Pobloso, Washington.
Oh, Paulsbo,
thank you. Paulsbo, Washington. That bookstore is really cool. If you guys ever around that town, I'd say go to Away with Words. I met a really cool woman there who talked about her own, instances with creepy males. You guys are good males. Don't worry about it. But it was nice to share that experience. And then she was like recommending the book, and they have like a little book club called Thrills and Chills. And I want to, try joining that because it's fun to talk about crime for some reason when you're a woman. And I prefer cults, though. I have a good subject about cults, but that's for another episode.
Nah, my documentaries are like the weird, factoid stuff. Like I still have to finish that McDonald's scandal documentary on HBO because I want to finish that.
Okay. No, we'll get to that another time.
Anyway, that'll be a future episode. Where can everybody find you, Jerome?
You can find me at Not Jerome Rhett on Instagram and also at RoboZoo Media on Instagram if you want to see any of the other stuff I'm into outside of this podcast with these two beautiful people. Those are my only two things. I was thinking I had other social media, but then I remembered I don't. So it's all good.
Fair enough. Alex?
I'm mainly on Instagram, Alex and Nobody. And then I handle the podcast's TikTok, the first ones to die. And then, what about you, Jonathan? Where are we finding you?
Yes, you can find me at Jonathan Keys. You can follow us at The First Ones to Die on your favorite social media platforms. You can email us, thefirstones2die@gmail.com. We love to hear your input. Did you watch The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel? We want to know. We want to know what you thought of it, if your opinions aligned with us or not. And we'll see you next time for another episode of The First Ones to Die. Peace
Later.
out.
Bye.